the number of our students going to schools, the population, lack of turnover in our community in terms of housing. And really what it becomes the case of is really where was the growth of Vernon Township going? So I thought I would put together for the council and for people here assembled in the community a presentation on the growth patterns of the past and the growth patterns of where we feel we are going in the future. We really need to look at where we've been to understand where we are now and where we think we might be going. Excellent. I can remember when I came up here, and a lot of you, that Vernon was kind of I guess the word bucolic place. You know, it's a rural community, about 5,000 residents. I'm using it as a point of reference, say around 1968, which is when I came up here. I remember finding out about Vernon. I had been looking for a home because I had lived in Midland Park in Vernon County. I had a young family, and when you started looking for homes down there or something that you would like, you were looking in the $50,000 to $60,000 area in the associated taxation. And while working in New York City, I became friendly with a resident of Vernon who was a salesman as I, and he was telling me about this great and wonderful place up north where you could buy a home for $17,500, brand new. And it was right by a lake. It was in Lake Conway, as a matter of fact. And you went up there, and it was absolutely gorgeous. Of course, the first time my son and my children, my wife and my daughter came up here, he got sick halfway up 515, so we never made it the first time because of road sickness. Second time we did, we made it, and we went up there and fell in love with the place. It was absolutely gorgeous. And we looked for a way to say, could we afford a home in Vernon Township at that time? And spoke to a builder at that time, spoke to a landowner, Mr. Conway, and Dick Conway, and Dick sold us a nice piece of property for a staggering sum of $1,500. And it was a corner lot right near a lake, and I love to fish, love to hunt, so it looked like the place to really be. And we decided to go for it. And when we came up here, we found there was a community that was based on agriculture and farming. Frequently I would be stopped in the road because of the cows being shuffled back and forth from the fields to the barns. I got a kick out of it, especially when I told people where I came from in Midland Park and the people who I worked with in New York. And when you came down here, there were limited local businesses and residential services. We all knew we had to travel a bit in order to get any of these services. Doctors, very few. There were permissive zoning and building regulations. You kind of did what you wanted to do as long as it was within reason. The township building department was there. They were kind of pressed at the time. They were understaffed. It was a low budget community. And the municipal services were limited. And the other part that you noticed very quickly was there were only a few ways to get into Vernon and get out of Vernon. 515, 94. And that was about it. Oh yeah, you could go over the mountain into West Milford if you wanted to take the scenic route. And I remember when I bought a home up here and I was telling my parents about it, they said, where in the devil are you going? And I said, don't worry, Franklin Den Hollander, who was then the Secretary of Transportation for the state of New Jersey, said, don't worry people, we are going to extend Route 208 over the mountain so that it will enter into New York State right about where the drive-in movie theater is. Still waiting. So that was our recent past. And we came north because of those reasons. There was land available for development. There was extensive land. You had quite a bit. Low mortgage, government financing. I remember one of the benefits of it, my friend Luke told me, he says, hey Pat, he said, Little FHA, Farmers Home Administration, is offering you a complete mortgage for a sum of $100 a week, no down payment, all you need is to own the property, and they'll fund it for you at 5%. Wow, this was fantastic. So, got that mortgage. Of Of course, within 8 years, I had to repay it, but that was the caveat. Once you could afford normal mortgaging, you did so. Homes on premium sites were far less than down below. You were looking at bi-levels, raised ranches, 3-4 bedrooms, $17,500, $2,000, $20,000. You were able to put a basement in for $1,000 finished. And it was a young community. When you came here, you found a lot of people like yourself. Right around that time, you were looking at 50% under the age of 18, and it began to creep up. And of course, you had low property taxes. You could be looking at taxes for your at home at $500 to $700. When you traveled, your gasoline was inexpensive. You knew that when you made the move up here, you were going to be sacrificing time for low-cost housing. Schools were great. When I came here, there was a lot of outbuildings, but the programs were being taught, and they were being taught effectively. And you had a Board of Education that was on top of it and beginning to look at purchasing for expansion. Minimal traffic, commuting on Route 23. I remember coming home from New York City, and when you got off off 46 onto Route 23, and you recall there was a Catholic church down there with a sign about a Catholic school and how many dollars it saved the local community. When you hit that light, which was right by a Robert Hall, that's how long ago it was, there was a little bit of a backup, and from then on it was clear sailing. But you know, every year after that, it began to creep up a little bit more. The backup now became a Packanack Lake. And once you got through there, it was okay. And the backup came at the Riverdale Circle. So it gradually moved up as the years increased because people were finding out about the areas that we came north from. You know, and you put up with it though, because we could not wait to get home. Especially in the summertime and spring, you know, you're driving up 23 and you hit the reservoirs and you say, isn't this great? You look around and you see things that, you know, you didn't see down below. When you came up 515, I wish I had a nickel for every time I drove up and down that blessed road. It was wonderful because you knew that you were going into a place that was worth it. And you came up here, you had extensive natural recreational facilities. You were looking at fishing, hunting, hiking. There were a lot of sports for the kids that were being developed, Little League Baseball, men's softball, women's softball, and of course the natural beauty of the township. Things changed. Everybody found out about it, and we're all here. During that time, building costs increased, number of houses increased, and we have a situation essentially like we're in right now. And we're looking at a community which is essentially stagnating. Will people come north again? Commuting time on Route 23 increases daily. At this point, over 2 hours in many cases. If you get on the road at 5 o'clock in the morning, you join the convoy. You go down to 23 to the light. Sometimes you wait 2 or 3 flips of the light before you can get onto 23. Then you head south. Don't begin to hit an open road going south until you pass the first 3 lights. It takes a little bit of time. The cost of gasoline is now a major concern. If you're driving a car, you could be looking at filling up your tank 2 to 3 times a week, depending upon the type of job you have. Home prices, right now, because of the types of homes you have and how long they've been here, the prices are on par with many of the communities in Passaic and Bergen County. And you would be saving anywhere from half an hour to 40 minutes. Taxes, again, on par with many of the communities in Passaic and Bergen County. Limited land available for development. If you came up here right now, there are lots available, but I would tend to think that they tend to be a little bit more expensive because of the lack of large parcels of land. The lots that you have are probably going to be conducive to more expensive building. Highlands Act, which was an act that was brought into being a few years ago, now restricts building in many areas because all of that vacant land is not suitable for development anymore. Government policies continue to maintain county population at current levels. For example, there's no new North Road South construction plan. As I mentioned earlier, when they were talking about 208, that was a while ago. There still isn't any talk. The government doesn't really want to have Sussex County opened up for further construction, and for further development. As a matter of fact, when I was on the Board of Education, the high school in 1974 was figured with a heating system of electrical heat. Everyone said, my God, why did you guys put electrical heat in? Well, when the building was designed by the architect, at that time, there was going to be a dam built in Cox Island that would supply hydroelectric power. Very, very inexpensive source of power. We committed to the building, and at that time we were told there was not going to be any Cox Island dam. We were stuck with the building, constructed for electric heat, and we had to run it down through our normal electric supply. Stricter environmental standards. People looking to do anything in Sussex County or in any of the areas around here are going to find that the state is very strict in their enforcement of environmental standards. And the emphasis in this community and all the communities around are going to be on ecotourism and multifamily housing units. That's not good. So what can we expect? Right now, Vernon Township is a maturing community. Doesn't mean we're getting old, but it means that many of the people who live in the community, like myself, maybe many of you, have been here for a long time and have chosen to stay. So your children have grown, and maybe that house that once held 4 and 5 and 6 is now a house for just you and your wife and the family pet. Why did you stay? Same reason I suppose I did. I love the community, the people are great, Vernon takes care of its own. And we're going to have a redirection of our growth. And I think that growth will be through seasonal and multifamily dwellings aligned with recreational leisure-based industries. Your multifamily housing is going to be put on pieces of property that may have once held 1 or 2 homes. You're going to be able to get 4 or 5 dwelling units on that. Private family construction will continue, but it will probably be sporadic and trending towards higher end consumers. So, the once 29.9 starters, and maybe now the 219, 229 starters are probably not going to be around unless you get the normal turnover. So new construction in that area is going to be minimal. Now, I'd like to ask my fellow member, Council Member Ed Dunn, to take over from here. And how can we facilitate growth in the future of the community?
Great, thank you, Patrick. I think what Patrick really talked about, he talked about the history of Vernon, he told the story of Vernon, right? We talked about what was, and I'd like to maybe just talk to you maybe a couple of slides of what the future could potentially look like for us. I think one of the key things that we understand as a community, all those things are in the past were certainly valuable to us as families, as businesses, as organizations, as we grew and matured in this wonderful community. But I think we need to recognize and acknowledge the changing direction of Vernon Township. I think it goes without question that will we ever have a revival based on potentially redeveloping, Vernon in any particular traditional sense? The answer is probably no at this point. So how do we look towards the future growth? One of the key things for future growth is, one of the key things, and the mayor's not here, but I'll actually give the kudos to Jerry and the rest of the organization here, is that we stabilized municipal tax rate. For the first time in 15 years, there's been no increase in municipal taxes. Very key piece, a great win for us. Hard at work, the mayor and the council in tandem together were able to accomplish a great deal in being able to do that. Completed necessary negotiations to complete the sewer. A lot of great work went on before it, and this particular council and this mayor got it across the finish line. Great work all around. The next piece was the missing link completed. Certainly a key piece in that needed to be, that was the integral part for everything getting done. So we have the groundwork, as you're beginning to see, how the future growth of Vernon could potentially be. So what else can be additionally done? We've heard it talked about quite a bit around the ideas, how do we go about promoting Vernon as a four-season recreation community? How do we get our arms around the skiing and the golfing and the boating, all things that we find dear to ourselves? What are those things that we can do as a community to help promote those things? What does the government do? What does business do? How do we work together to see that come to fruition? Part of that is about networking with regional brokers, attorneys, corporate leaders, informing them that we are now a good place to do business. For a very long time, Vernon was one of those places where it wasn't friendly to do business. And I think that's slowly changing. It's happening one conversation at a time, one story at a time, one opportunity at a time. As we see businesses starting to take an interest in the town center, as we see the sewers being done, there's a lot of good talk going on outside the community of people looking in and saying, look, I see some interesting things going on in Vernon. I'd like to be a part of that. The other piece here is we want to be able to fast track any business applications that come in and want to be a part of Vernon. Obviously, they need to jump through the right hoops, but obviously it's about helping to promote that business here in Vernon. So the basis, so that's just a very small snippet, a very small picture into the growth of Vernon. What we'd like to do is just see conversations around future presentations that we're thinking about. This is about returning to tax rolls, those foreclosed properties owned by the town. I think we're starting to work on that. You're beginning to see that. There's some very key pieces around that, some people being very active in this space within the government and others taking interest. We need also to continue to drive and promote the sewer hookups that generate our tax revenues, right? Because the story here is we have decreasing revenues, but we have to find a way to increase those revenues. The sewer system is certainly part of that. Look towards increasing our commercial rate rules wherever possible. We don't have a lot of space to do this in, but if there are opportunities, we should take advantage of that. Have a plan to pay down our debt over time and become a debt-free municipality once again. I think this is a key piece. I believe we're at a place of, I believe our debt is around 23 million, Jerry? About 23 million? That is a tough nut to crack in anybody's business, and we have to chip away at it. We have to make some good decisions around being smart with our money. And certainly over time, we hope to do that. And then working together to bring the vision of the town center to life. I think it's very important that this be a very positive message for everyone. It is very rare for Vernon Township to have an opportunity like this. It's very rare for any town to have this opportunity to bring this vision to life for a town center that doesn't exist anywhere else that I'm aware of in New Jersey. So with that, I'll turn that back over to Pat, and thank you for listening, everybody.
At this point, I'll open the meeting to the public. Yes?
Hi, good evening. My foot is hurting me, so I apologize. I'd like to stand here if I can. My name is Doreen Edwards. I'm from Highland Lakes. Just a quick question. Have letters gone out to the entities that will be assessed with the sewer fees?
I believe that will be done soon, if it hasn't already. I know that they are right now working. They worked on the sewer hookup rates. They're offering some promotional activities in order to get them going.
I heard that. It's something by the end of March 31st.
Yeah, I would think that it's probably going to be going out. I can have that check for you and get back.
March 31st is like right around the corner. If that was the cutoff point for like an incentive to.
Let me see if we can check that for you. If we can put the answer on the town website and get back.
Yeah, we would like to see something on the town website about that if you would.
Okay.
And also about if, churches and other entities, was that discussed whether there be any kind of fee reductions for that?
That's up to that's the municipal sewer authorities' responsibility.
All right, thank you.
Yes, anything else?
Everybody up there? Okay, good evening, Tom McClackery. As you know, we supported the petition to stop the pay increases as proposed in ordinance 12-01. And we also say that that ordinance, falls under the Faulkner Act. Whether you want to bifurcate conditions of that ordinance out or not, they are strictly under the Faulkner Act. And we also would like to say that you have the option of rescinding that ordinance without putting it out to election. But if you so choose to put it out to election, we would also like to see that you ask the public on 3 other things, since you're choosing to put a petition out to the public. And that would be, our position has been and continues to be, that there should be no debt incurred over $500,000 per year without it going out to public referendum. Number 2 is that we should consider that since 2008, the economy has been dropping. And people have been into financial strain. And that perhaps to do something about that, we could rescind the permit fees and fines to the 2008 levels. As you know, since 2007, you folks have risen those fees 3 times. And the third thing I'd like to bring up is that during the reassessment, as you know, we were down here saying that in 2008 may not be the best of times to reassess valuations on everybody's properties, since at that point valuations seem to be dropping a little, just a tad, just a bit. And to do a revaluation in a falling market is just going to invite numerous tax appeals, which is what has occurred since the revaluation has happened. So at this point, we'd like to see you folks come back with a plan to reassess and decrease the entire town tax base by 10% across the board. We would not like to see something that's occurring in Wantage, where you take sections of the township, revalue them in a year, and then their lower taxes get transferred over to the rest of the tax base. In Wantage are paying something on the order of $1,100 per year because of this revaluation stance by the Wantage town tax assessor. So we would like to see a reduction, decrease in the entire valuation of the tax base across the board for the entire township. Having said that, as you know, over the last 2 years, there's been a $90 million decrease in the commercial recreational portion of the tax base. That amounts to about $3.4 million in transfer of taxes to the residential tax base. And we think it's about time that if you can't do a decrease across the board, that perhaps you would consider spending another $800,000 and revalue the entire township to its true valuations, which are not reflected in the tax assessment as it goes currently. And the last thing I have to say is, as far as pay increases and the petitions, anything that is a pay increase should reflect exactly what the rest of the workers are getting. So if you're giving the rest of the workers in this township 1.5% and 2%, that's what that pay increase should be reflecting, if anything at all. Thank you very much, and good night.
Pat, do you mind? I just want to make something very clear for the record, because unfortunately, I probably have let it go in the past and should have corrected it. It is not possible for this council to vote to rescind the ordinance that is the subject of a successful petition. The law does not provide for that. Any suggestion that it does is false and tends to put this council in the position, or maybe even the public in a position of thinking the council has anything to do with it. It's wrong, and it's time that we correct the record. The matter has to go by law on the ballot in November, and this council can take no action. I don't want to have to say this at every single meeting. I don't know why it's brought up at every single meeting, but the suggestion is false. Nothing can be done. It has nothing to do with this council at this point in time. Thanks.
Robert Oliver, Sand Hill Road in Vernon. Would it be fair to say, Mr. Kelly, that doubt or misrepresentation or whatever the right word you would like to put for it is partly due to what you previously put out there? Because I do think that it is suspect. If you read the Faulkner Act, it's pretty clear that that's not the case. There seems to be some misinterpretation.
Sir, you're entitled to your opinions. You're not entitled
Well, that is what I'm asking.
You're not entitled to your laws. They're on the books.
And is that your opinion, or is that a fact? Have you got any precedent for that fact?
It's the law. It's the law.
So have you got any precedent for that?
Of course I do. And it was
Can you
presented
give us the
here at a
precedent for
public
that?
meeting, and it was presented actually to newspapers, and was widely disseminated and quoted.
Can you give us the precedent for that then, please?
It's already been done.
The act, the case, the...
Sure.
There's a case law for this?
Yes.
What is it?
Didn't bring it with me.
That's convenient.
No, it's not convenient. It's not convenient. It's because it's been done several other times, and I haven't
The Faulkner Act
repeated
has
it.
been done several other times.
You know what? I'm not going to argue. You're entitled to your opinions. You can have an opinion. You cannot have your laws. There's a difference.
And this...
I think you've been answered, Mr. Oliver. The attorney has given us his opinion.
That's what I'm asking. Is he his opinion, or is it a fact? That is exactly my question.
Right, he's justified.
And you're now saying it's an opinion.
No, he's given us his interpretation of the law. That's what he does.
Actually, I've given you the appellate division's interpretation of the law. I don't have opinions.
Okay, can you give us the precedent then, please?
Yes, I have. It's been stated on this record before. It's been provided in the public. I did not bring that case with me tonight. I can't remember the name of it.
Fair enough. The next time that you were up there and I'm down here, can you please give us that case?
Yeah, it should appear in the minutes of meetings when we introduced the ordinance. I cited the case and I cited the statute.
Yeah, that wasn't why I came up here, to be honest with you. I noticed on Mr. Rizzuto's presentation that he made a comment about network with regional brokers, attorneys and corporate leaders. I just had a question really for the Vernon First team. Does that explain their relationship with Skylands Pack?
Sorry?
Does that explain your relationship with the Skylands Pack?
I have no relationship with Skylands Pack.
You didn't accept money from them?
I did, but that doesn't indicate that I have a relationship with them. I accepted money from a number of other people. I don't have relationships with them, other than have a common interest to see the community grow in the way that's proper. There was no, you're making it sound like that there was some quid pro quo, and there wasn't. Simple as that. You can look all you want, Mr. Oliver, but giving funny looks up here doesn't change the fact.
Well,
My
you give funny
relation-
looks all the time, Mr. Rizzuto. That just
I'm sorry?
You give funny looks all the time.
I
In
do?
fact, I was
I hadn't
thinking
realized
a little while ago that you
I
were
hadn't
showing
realized
a look of absolute disinterest when somebody was speaking up here.
No, I
That
was
is
listening.
inappropriate considering you're paid.
I
I'm
was
not.
listening. Perhaps the interest depends upon what is being said.
I say again, you're paid.
I'm paying?
Yes, you're paid.
For what?
You're paid for being up.
Oh,
And
I'm
that's-
paid, I'm paid. No, whatever I'm paid is not significant. I'm up here because I chose.
Is that why you wanted to increase it?
No, not at all. It was being increased because it was the salaries for all of the people up here were being addressed to the level of responsibility and work that they're putting forward.
Which is less than it was under the previous form of government.
I don't think so. The amount of time and work that we spend on reading and attending to the needs of the government is more significant, I think. By virtue of the fact
I'm
that.
glad you said you think, because I don't.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good evening, Gary Marks. Excuse me, resident business owner, hopefully. First of all, thanks, I see the resolutions are on the township website. I was a little surprised though because they're in one big batch of PDF form. I don't know if that's a technical glitch, you're gonna change that later on. I would think that if you can do all the ordinances as separate, you should be able to do the resolutions that way as well. Since the resolutions were available, one of the resolutions I was able to take a look at was the concession one. And I have a couple of comments on that. I've looked at concessions resolutions at several other towns in New Jersey. And one of the things that I see missing from ours that I think perhaps we might want to add is this is open-ended. Every other resolution I found in towns was for a period of time, a defined period of time. They would redo it appropriately each year or 3 years, whatever. This one has no time frame at all, which means it's an open-ended, so the PA will be able to use it, or whoever gets it. The other thing is that, and I was wondering, it said there's only one bidder, and I thought perhaps one of the other things you could do is possibly make this a temporary resolution and try and get some other bids in. I'm not quite sure, was this advertised, RFP?
There were two other bidders.
There were.
No, Mr. Wetzel, let me just, if you don't mind, I can correct the record on that. There were numerous local businesses and people, outside of the county or outside of the township that did express interest and picked up bids and did site visits on the property, but only one formal proposal was received. At least 3 did a visit and many more, or a few more.
Was it written? I'm assuming you didn't have chances. Was there written documentation on what the request for bid was, what the specifications were?
There was a full bid specification packet that was given to anybody that was interested.
The reason I asked was because there seemed to be another one where the bidding was done just by phone call, and I just want to make sure that this didn't happen with this one.
This was an advertised bid by law. It has to be advertised. It was advertised properly. And again, numerous people expressed interest.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask a question. Since this is a resolution, the time element is for 1 year. Is that correct?
Competitive contracting dictates that these contracts are for 1 year with the option of extending to 2. So that's set forth in the statute.
So it's understood as being 1 year.
Yeah.
Now, does this year end December 31st?
Usually it's the others state their period of time, exact dates.
Well, my point is, this is a resolution, and it only lasts until December 31st.
Well, no, because the resolution you're approving is for a contract, so it's not necessarily.
All right.
I know I understand what you're saying, but because the resolution is approving the contract and the statutes would dictate the term.
But then I would assume that we need to amend to have some kind of time element.
No, I mean, state law dictates it, so, I mean, it's set forth already by state law.
So if we're silent on it, it's still a year.
It's understood that it's a 1 year
Yeah.
contract with the option to renew for 2. And then when this contract is up, this council will look at it at that time and decide whether they want to renew it or not.
December 31st, or is it going to be beginning of March?
I believe it was beginning of March, but I'll double check that. I have to check with the purchasing agent on that.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Idris?
Mary Ellen Conti, Nutley Avenue. Did you gentlemen ever vote on whether the mayoral position should be full or part-time? Was there ever a vote on that?
Yeah, actually, there was.
When was
It was
it?
done when we adopted the code for the administrative code. The requirements in that code clearly set forth the responsibilities and duties of the mayor, responsibilities.
As full-time or part-time?
It's
Well, I'm asking the question, did you vote for it to be full-time?
Full-time.
or part-time? And it was in the minutes? It's
We
in the
passed,
minutes?
we passed the code, Mr. Shatan.
Right, I understand
And
that,
was,
but the mayor had told me it was in the minutes, and I just wanted to make sure that.
I know the codes are in the minutes.
Well, I know that, sir.
The problem
My
is-
question, it's just a simple question, okay?
I believe it is. If it isn't, it's in.
So you
it's
voted
within-
that
it's
the
within
mayoral
administrative
position
code.
should be full-time,
It was in the administrative code, the code was approved as part of the minutes.
and so the position is a full-time
Yes.
position? Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry for that outburst before, I think I got bit by something, I don't know what, but anyway, during that.
As long as you didn't see it black and run away.
No, I don't know, I haven't seen it, it could be even scarier. Anytime, you kind of alluded to the fact that there were some businesses that are interested in Vernon Town Center. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, please?
I don't think I can specifically point all the businesses. I've had anecdotal conversations with certain people who have expressed an interest, but it's not something I could really speak to publicly just yet.
We're talking about small entities or larger entities that would bring, you know?
Both.
Any other comments?
I wasn't gonna talk about this, but I just do wanna make one statement about the statute that was used in the ordinance for the salary ordinance. And the statute that was used when that ordinance was written, we don't find in the Faulkner Act, under the Faulkner Act. So I think that it brought in confusion that we know we're a Faulkner Act town. So when we look at the rules and the statutes for Faulkner, we don't see the ordinance number, the ordinance that was, the statute that was used in the ordinance for the salary ordinance. And it's now brought in a bunch of confusion on all sides, really.
No, it's not
You may,
here.
you may feel clear about it, Kevin,
It's not me.
but we who believe we are a Faulkner Act town don't know why a statute was put in our ordinance that isn't under Faulkner in the first place. So that's, I think, where the problem began
Oh, I agree.
for
I
a lot
agree.
of us.
I understand that.
And to that point, under Faulkner, yes, the council would have 20 days to repeal the ordinance after the petition was certified. Under the statute that was put in the salary ordinance, it reads it goes on the November election.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct.
So I think we could probably all agree that maybe we don't all agree on what statute should be being used, but
Well, Sally,
That's all
none
I'm
of
gonna
us,
say about that.
none of us made that decision. The appellate court of the state of New Jersey made the decision in 2008, which of the two prevailed. And I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the case tonight.
okay.
But I actually, I'll tell you what I did. I handed it to this newspaper reporter over here from the New Jersey Herald 2 meetings ago, and he printed it in the newspaper. Now, if anybody has a better memory than me, you'll remember the name of the case, but it's a case that decided it. The appellate division. And I'm just drawing a blank tonight on that case, but I'd be
So just-
happy to show it to you
just to be
because it
clear.
resolves that issue.
So that case would dictate that it supersedes the Faulkner Act.
Right,
Is
it
that
says
what you're saying?
preempts.
Preempts.
the word that it
It
uses.
specifically says preempts the Faulkner Act.
Yes, there are two, because there are two ordinances, as you just referred.
Right.
Nobody knew which one prevailed over the other, because Faulkner has its own,
Right.
as we know. And it is very misleading, it's somewhat complicated, that's why we took the time to explain it the way we did, and make sure that everyone was on the same page, and then, well, I'm not gonna, I have no reason to attribute.
Just a quick question, in retrospect, could the salary ordinance have not utilized that statute?
No, every salary ordinance in the state of New Jersey is,
Must go like
in
that.
every
Okay, fair
town
enough.
is that salary ordinance.
Okay.
And it's odd because it does, it is preempted, it does preempt Faulkner Act ordinance. I don't know why, but that's what the.
So you're talking about 165, I think it was.
165, yeah.
Right.
Took me over an hour to read that. I'm not sure I understood it all.
Well, it took me about a day, so.
Well, the fact that now, if we're going by 165, then yes, it will potentially, it will go on the November ballot.
Right.
But let us not, lose sight of the fact that the mayor could have vetoed it in 10 days. And there was a time at which the council could have turned the wheels around and gone the other way, so I'll let that rest for the moment. I would be interested to know, with the concession stands, we're hearing now that they have to go out for bid. Could you cite the law by which dictates that? Because Jerry, you were on board for a full year prior, and you never brought that forward as a requirement. So I'm curious as to what law now applies to that, dictating that the concession stands now must go out for bid. Because
The competitive contracting law dictates that concession stands are subject to competitive contracting, and on 2 different and distinct occasions, I received an opinion from the Department of Local Government Services indicating that.
do you have that in writing somewhere?
Off the top of my head, I don't have it not with me, but yes, I can provide you information from the Department of Local Government Services that says yes, it is subject to competitive contracting.
You asked that specifically,
Absolutely.
and we could have that.
Absolutely. 2 different emails.
Is it bothering you that I'm asking that question?
No.
Why should it
Thank
bother?
you.
I think it's an inappropriate question.
I'm just asking based on the tone, that's all.
I'm just being very clear with the information that I was providing.
Thank you, Jerry, appreciate that.
I was wondering why you didn't do it the whole year prior then.
It should have been done in the past, and it wasn't.
You were the manager, okay.
Point of order, can I point out?
No,
Was
point of order,
put
you're out of
excuse
order.
me.
It was put out for competitive bid last year.
You're out of order.
Excuse
That's
me.
correct. Robert.
This is a question for Mr. Duff. Previously, the EDC partnered with a marketing company that did a two days worth of video and a promotional for the town of Vernon, and it was on the former website. Is there gonna be an effort to bring that forward on the new website?
No.
Any reason for that?
It wasn't originally thought of to do that. We went in a different direction.
But I think it might not have anything to do with direction, because if you remember, time was sold to businesses for 3 years worth of exposure, I believe, in that marketing agreement and partnership with that company and the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So by those people who paid, like Jack Smith and others, who paid for advertising time based on a length of time.
Do you have the receipts for that? Do you have all the documentation and everything that I could see?
don't have that with me, but
Why
you're
don't you
on
have that?
EDC, Eddie. You
No,
should
that was
report.
actually during your leadership and during Jim Schreiner, who was the head of that, so.
You were a member then, so
I
you
was a
should
member of
report.
that, but I didn't have the documentation back then, and back then, I was an ad hoc member. So I think the responsibility actually falls upon you to provide that for me. If you can.
On me?
Yes,
Oh.
provide to you and Jim Schreiner. If you
No,
can provide that
actually-
documentation, I'd be more than
See, but
happy
everybody's
to be able to have that and consider it for you. So if that's something
Is
you'd like
that
to
your
do, that
answer,
would be
that I need to
appreciated.
show you
If you
that
have the
you need to look at
documentation,
that?
I would be glad to consider it. Thank you.
Wow. It might be a contractual thing, you might want to look into it.
Any other? Any other comments?
Administrator, just to confirm,
No, you address the chair.
okay? Can I ask the council, you probably won't know this because they weren't there then, to confirm that the Maple Grange Park and the Flats Park was put out for bid 18 months ago?
18 months ago, this council wasn't in.
That is why I addressed the business
I think
administrator.
perhaps you ought to ask the previous mayor.
Well, I could tell you, because my other half was on the rec committee at the time, that it was put out for bid 18 months ago. There were no bids received, and I was asking the then manager, I believe you were then the manager, to confirm.
It was,
Again, address your remarks to the chair.
The chair doesn't seem to know.
It doesn't make any difference. It's an act that's already taken place under a different administration. I think the situation is moot, and I think you're wasting the time of the council. Can we do anything about it?
Just merely pointing out an inaccuracy.
Thank you very much.
And again, you'll pay for this.
Any other questions or comments?
Mike Rubin, Highland Lakes. During your presentation, I was very interested in when the high school was built and it was made all electric, where exactly were they going to develop that fall?
Docks Island Dam. It's the Delaware River. It was an area, Docks Island, that was going to be flooded by the federal government. The federal government was buying houses. I think they still own houses there. And at some point, the project was deemed inadvisable, and it stopped. The federal government still retains ownership.
If I Google that, I can get information on that?
I think you'd have to, if you could probably go back to some of the newspaper archives. It was in 1974, 75, 76. It was kind of a major issue at the time, and caused an awful lot of consternation in this town.
Yeah, because,
It's
one
weird
of my
idea.
platforms when I was running for council.
I think people were just upset about what would happen, because I think if you look at the area right now, it's still shown on the maps as the Docks Island Recreation Area. And that recreation area was to include a major damming of the Delaware and the creation of a major reservoir, fishing, boating, and so forth, and also for the use of hydroelectric power. Why I don't recall why it was, why the project was terminated, but it was.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'll ask for a motion to close the meeting to the public.
Motion. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any of the mayor's comments?
there's no report on the afternoon.
Report, okay. Items for action. Regular approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 16th, 2012. All members, I believe, received a copy of the minutes. Do I have a motion to have the minutes approved as read? Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions, comments, or deletions, or comments on the minutes? No? Then I'll ask for a vote.
Councilmember Dunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Catus?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
We have the minutes of the regular meeting of February 27th. All members have received a copy of those minutes. Can I have a motion to have those minutes approved as read?
I assume the corrections have been made.
Yes.
Okay, the motion by Mr. Kadesh. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Wetzel. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Okay. We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Dunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Catus?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
We have a consent agenda for the attached. Resolution number 1259. The approval of bills list. We have resolution 1260, tax overpayment refund. This is for a tax court judgment for 2009 taxes overpaid on 2 properties, and these were successful appeals. Resolution 1261, tax overpayment, tax court judgment for 2010 taxes on the same 2 properties. Again, these were successful appeals. Resolution 1262, the awarding of the concession license. Successful bidder was the Vernon PAL, Maple Grange and Veterans Park. We have the resolution of 1263 from the Police Department of data sharing services. This is a contract renewal for a data sharing database in police department vehicles. He has a resolution of 1264 for fire department training. This is a contract to award to train members for the fire departments, fire hazards, engine and truck operations. You have a resolution 1265 authorizing the office to issue a new limousine license. All of the this is for the office of the council. All requirements were met on the issuance of this limousine license. Resolution 1266, contract renewal for geologic software support for planning and zoning, building department, administrative offices, and assessor's office. Resolution 1267 is an interlocal agreement with Sussex Borough and QPA services. This authorizes the execution of a interlocal agreement with qualified purchasing agent services through December 31st, 2012. Resolution 1268 is for a professional services agreement for tax maps and appeals. It authorizes the execution of agreements to update the tax map and to assist the assessor's office with tax appeals and added assessments. Resolution 1269 authorizes acceptance of the HVAC repairs and upgrades and directs the engineer to proceed with final paperwork on the project. Do I have this in a form of a motion as a consent agenda, or are there any particular resolutions council members would like to have extracted?
Yes, I'd like to extract resolution 12-62.
12-62. Okay, is there any other resolutions? With the understanding that resolution 1262 will not be in the consent agenda, may I have a motion to have the consent agenda moved?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kadish, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dunn. Any questions or comments on any of the existing resolutions? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Dunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Cady.
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto.
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel.
Yes.
Resolution 1262, the award of a concession license. Successful bidder was the Vernon PAL. Grounds included were Maple Grange and Veterans Park. May I have that as a form of a motion to get on the floor for discussion? Is there a motion?
I make the motion.
Is there a second? Okay, the motion is on the floor and seconded. Any questions or comments on this particular motion? Mr. Cage, anything concerned?
I just feel that not enough time has been given to get these bids in. And I feel really disappointed that one of the only ways for many of these associations, sports associations, to raise funds was through that concession stand. And we already give the PAL $20,000 a year. And I just think it's becoming monopolistic in its spirit.
You know, I wonder if there's any communication between the different groups, historical society, etc., between the PAL to share services.
This does not sound to me like it's a, let's all get together and see what we can do to raise money. We are being asked to abide by statutory requirements. The requirements were met based upon the bid guidelines. The bids were submitted. Were the council, in my opinion, I'd have to ask Attorney President, if the council were to not honor the successful bid, I think there'd be a question as to why in fact that bid was not made, if in fact all bid conditions were met.
And to be clear, numerous people did indicate interest and received bid packets and came to the town and talked to the purchasing agent, talked to the director of community affairs, and took site visits. And I mean, there were people that picked up these bids and were interested, and for whatever reason they chose not to put a bid in.
Well, it wasn't for whatever, it was for want of a hood, which means more investment.
And that's something maybe in the future, to maybe get a more advantageous rate, the council would consider investing money in. But that could be a $25,000, $30,000 expense, and at this point we just weren't comfortable recommending that. One of the companies, they did have other options. I mean, one of the companies, posed questions on other options that might be available to them, as did the PAL, and we explained those options.
I can truly understand your feeling that, it's been done in a way in the past that was kind of, was looked on as being acceptable. But when information is made available and you're found that it's not being done the way it should be, I think, it becomes incumbent upon the council to make sure, certainly the mayor's office, to make sure that these regulations are followed. Questions? Any other comments or questions? Call for a vote.
Okay, Councilmember Dunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Katie.
No.
Councilmember Rizzuto.
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel.
No.
We'll have to re-examine it. Perhaps it could be a subject for our next work session on the 25th.
So what happened with that, please?
Motion fails for lack of a majority. The public hearing on second reading of ordinances. This is ordinance number 12-02, an ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, authorizing the sale of certain property owned by the township and not required for public purposes, and more commonly known as Block 103.20, Lot 12. May I have a motion to have this item put on the floor? Motion by
Second.
Mr. Wetzel, seconded by Mr. Panish. Any council discussion on this item? There's no council discussion, we'll open the meeting to the public on this. Any public comment on this item alone?
Where's it located?
On Lakes, it's the,
The address is in
adjacent to two pieces of existing property. The ordinance is listed and shown, so if you have any questions, it can be on there.
Highland Lake.
It's not on this. No further questions? There'll be no further questions. I'll ask for the motion to close the meeting to the public.
Motion.
Motion is made by Mr. Dunn. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wetzel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Dunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Cady.
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto.
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel.
Yes.
Ordinance number 12-03, an ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, amending the code of the Township of Vernon. May I have this in the form of a motion to put it on the floor for discussion? Motion by Mr. Wetzel. Is there a second? Is there a second to this motion?
No second.
Seconded. Mr. Dunn? Maybe, is there any questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious why, it has 32510. Oh, I see. Yeah,
That's the sign.
this is,
That's the sign.
oh, okay.
No other questions? Now I'll open the meeting to the public. Any questions or comments from the public on this particular ordinance, or this ordinance? Ruben?
This code is concerned basically.
The administrative code,
Just administrative.
yes. It is the
Hierarchy or?
Exactly. Previously, this individual reported to the chief of police. Now they made some reports directly to the office of the.
Good evening, Council Clackery. A quick comment. Is there any chances we put the administrative code onto the website? Thank you very much.
Can I have a motion to close the meeting to the public?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Dunn, is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Wetzel, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And we have a roll call vote on this ordinance.
Councilmember Dunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Cady.
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto.
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel.
Yes.
At this point, I'll ask if there are any comments from the council.
I do.
So, Mr. Dunn?
I want to circle back to the earlier comments in the exchange between Mrs. Rinker and myself. I want to, just upon further reflection, I think it's important that we're consistent in our views in terms of how we go about promoting business in Vernon. So I'd like to extend a level of cooperation if there's an opportunity to look into the issue of the videos. And if Mrs. Rinker, you're willing to work with me on that and state that publicly, I would love the opportunity to be able to reconcile that and see if there's an opportunity to leverage those videos. It was never my intent to ever create any friction or of any kind. It is my intent to create and promote business in Vernon as much as we can. And if there is an opportunity to do so, I'd like to do that. Does that sound okay? Okay. I have no other further comments.
Mr. King?
Maybe Kevin, you want to mention the law that I know you came across it during the.
Oh, the case.
Regarding the case, yeah.
Yes, thank you. The case that we were talking about, Sally, most specifically you and I, is the appellate division ruling in City of Ocean City versus Somerville. It's reported at 403 New Jersey Super 345. It's an appellate division case in 2008, that I did remember correctly. And it held that the general statute, quote, preempts the Faulkner Act's general referendum provision of NJSA 40:69A-185, end of quote. That was the quote from the case, not me. And the reason I didn't have it tonight is because we did it several times in the past and I didn't bring those materials tonight with me. But fortunately, this was right next to me.
City of Ocean City versus.
Yeah, it's a city of Ocean City versus Somerville. And I have it, so,
Mr. West?
okay.
I have just a few comments. Regarding the council's decision, actually, it's not the council's decision, it's just the fact of law of placing the ordinance 12-01 on the ballot in November. Each one of us has stood before the voters previously, and that's how we got here. Not afraid of the voters. I don't think any of us are. Personally, I've gone out as a member of the school board and sold over $15 million worth of schools to the public, which, if you consider $15 million versus 41,000, it's a little bit different. So I think the public is in tune, willing to accept reasonable reasoning, and I'm not troubled by it at all. Secondly, what I am troubled by, though, is it seems to be a hollow bell. The fact that we are told that association espouses the passage by referendum of anything over $500,000, and Mr. McClatchy stated that, and yet there was no opposition at the recent School Board of Education meeting when the public was disenfranchised by denying the vote on a $72 million budget and a $40 million tax levy. Now, if you're going to talk about, consistency of thought, I would think that someone who was proposing the passage of a referendum for 500,000 plus would certainly have had their voices heard at a meeting when the decision was made to take away the vote from the community for a budget that exceeds $72 million. I have no other comments.
Can I just add one more? I'm sorry, I forgot my note here. Could I? This is addressed to Tom McClackery. I liked your comments. I wanted to know more about the 10% drop in tax assessment value. I'd like to know more how you arrived at 10%. Is there any data that would support that consistently with other towns? I've been doing my own little research and I've been reading things, and if there's an opportunity to share how you come about what the 10% should look like based on real-time data, evidence-based, to try to think through how that would work in this town. And if you have a plan that's specific, that's doable, and is something that is valuable, I'd love to take a look at that. So I'd like to extend that other opportunity for us to talk about that at some point.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion's passed.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.